Michigan, we don't exactly know what their offense is. We've seen it once against Fresno State. We saw Davis Warren. And Texas, we know what they are. It's the same offense, same quarterback, different receivers, but they've just reloaded. You're bringing Ryan Wingo as a superstar freshman. They bring in Isaiah Bond. They've got everything they need to move the ball. We wonder up the middle of their defense, how are they going to do against a Michigan team that likes to run the ball and likes to get after you? But I think it's very easy to just say, well, I think Texas is going to be too explosive for Michigan. So I actually went back and watched all of Davis Warren's snaps, all his dropbacks from the Fresno State game. And it was interesting when I came. First of all, Colston Loveland is their most dynamic target. It's not close. Like, they tried to get some other guys involved, try to do some things where they got, Samaj Morgan maybe got him the ball in stride so he can try to get some yak yards. But Colston Loveland is the guy who can get open every time. So I'm going to since this is a PrizePicks preview, I'm going to tell you right now, Colston Loveland's PrizePicks projection for this game is 41.5 receiving yards.
Mm-hmm.
If Michigan has any chance at all, it's going to be more than that and way more than that, because he is Davis Warren's security blanket. He's the one who can get open, and I don't care how good the Texas defense is. He can get open against them. So that's the one. And for those of you who don't know, PrizePicks, best daily fantasy game in America. You download the app, you use the code Staples, play $5, you get $50 instantly, win or lose, and you pick squares. And so you pick as few as 2 squares. You can pick as many as 5 squares. The more you pick, the higher the potential payout. I'm telling you right now that if you think Michigan's going to win this game, then you go more than on Colston Loveland 41.5, because he is going to have to do that. And I think you probably have to go more than Davis Warren. I believe it's 150.5. I think you're going to have to go more than that too. The question is, can they do that against Texas's defense?
I mean, when I looked at the numbers, Andy, the Loveland number was way, way, way lower than I would have ever. Like, if you had to, we play that game, it's like, pick the line, make the line. When we're talking about game spreads, but when you're talking about PrizePicks, like, make the number. Didn't he have like 90 receiving yards and 8 or 9 receptions last week? Like, he is their number one target. So in a game like this at home, especially where we're in a situation where, at least I am worried about the type of quarterback play we're going to get from Michigan as a whole this year, the security blanket getting to 50 yards, which would be be more than that number, much more, seems to be kind of like a layup to me.
Yeah, because even if they lose this game, I see him going more than 41.5 receiving yards, because clearly he is Davis Warren's favorite target. I mean, I don't need a lot of dropbacks. I don't need to watch much to know that. Now, my question to you is, how does Michigan win this game? And I will say, from watching those dropbacks, just watching their pass game, they're better when they come out of those condensed formations. When they're in those formations where you are dead certain they're going to run the ball, and they're sneaking Loveland out, and they've got the receivers kind of bunched in there, and they come, spreading out as after the play begins. I think they're better doing that than going 4 wide or 5 wide. Like, when they go 4 wide, I feel like they're pretty vulnerable, because I don't think they have a lot of receivers that scare you. Like, when Texas goes 4 wide, that's scary as hell.
Right.
I don't feel that way about Michigan. I feel like Michigan's got to run the ball well with Mullings and Donovan Edwards, and then use those formations that they're having success with in the run game to then pass out of those.
Yeah. So, being here in Texas, I am surrounded by a lot of Texas fans that are kind of in my circle now. People from daycare, people that work with my wife, some of the friends that I have are big Texas guys. And I think the general sentiment is that Texas is going to not just win this game, but win by 2 or 3 scores. That's what people are expecting. And the thing that I say back to them is, one, I just got done underestimating Michigan for an entire season that ended up culminating in a national championship. And then 2, Andy, is if you were to do a draft of the best overall players in this game, I think that there is a real case to be made, and maybe this is too far, but the top 3 players might be too far, would be on Michigan's defense, but certainly the top 2 players in the game overall are on Michigan's defense. So when you ask me, how is Michigan going?
We sure Kelvin Banks wouldn't be your number 2 pick behind Will Johnson? Are we sure about that? I mean, you're talking about Mason Graham and Kelvin Banks. It's a tough one.
Let's line them up at midfield and let them fight for it. I don't know. Kelvin Banks would probably be 2 or 3, depending on, because Will Johnson, I think we can both agree, is clear and above number 1. Right.
He would be number 1, but yeah, my question is it Kelvin Banks, the left tackle for Texas, or one of the 2 D tackles for Michigan, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant? Like the crazy thing about this is all of these humans that we've just mentioned could be picked in the top 10 of the NFL draft next year if things go a certain way this season.
And the point really, like whether or not you want to say Banks is 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever, the point is that Michigan, in my opinion, probably has 3 of the 4, or does have 3 of the 4 best players on the field, and 3 of them are on defense. So how does Michigan win the game? By stopping the run, especially considering the fact that we know that Texas lost an important piece of their backfield in the preseason, and just mucking the game up. Like if this game goes over, I think that Michigan will have lost by 2 scores. But if this game is under and Michigan creates some extra possessions, is able to run the football, gets Loveland involved, I part of me in my gut feels like Texas should win by 1 million, but my gut's telling me that Michigan is still a very, very good football team and is able to keep, at least at home in their first game since winning a national championship, a game against a program that has, historically played in close games that shouldn't be close, pretty close. So my brain's telling me Texas by 10, but there's just something in my gut that's saying that Michigan's going to be able to keep this game close.
Well, and if you're going on the PrizePicks course and you're looking at the Texas receivers, like I have a hard time deciding who I would go with.
It's hard.
Because last week they had 4 guys with over 50 receiving yards: Ryan Wingo, Isaiah Bond, Jonte Cook, and Matthew Golden. Matthew Golden caught 2 touchdown passes. Isaiah Bond caught 1. Ryan Wingo led them in receiving yardage. He's the freshman who may be the best of this bunch when all is said and done. And so I don't know who to pick. And then Scott in the chat has an interesting comment. So the unknown, we still don't know what Michigan has. Texas won in a flashy way last week. Michigan played their cards close. I'm going to push back on that. I do think Michigan did play their cards close. I think Michigan probably was very vanilla against Fresno State, was not trying to show too much. But I will argue that Texas also was not trying to show too much against Colorado State. They didn't win in a flashy way. They're just that much better than Colorado State. They didn't do anything exotic.
So here's the thing that I want to ask you, Andy. You're probably more, having played the game, technical with X's and O's and understanding the actual sports intricacies. Will Johnson is the best corner in college football. There's no question about it. Just watching him play is awe-inspiring. But I think Texas probably has the receiving core a year after having a receiving core that could probably most stack up with what Ohio State puts on the field every Saturday, right? So if you have one corner that is as good as Will Johnson, but you have Jonte Cook and Bond and all these guys, do you wonder how much a person like Johnson can be neutralized when he can only cover one person? And do you fear that Michigan won't be able to stop Texas through the air? Because that is the one thing that I keep going to in my brain of like, this game could be ugly for Michigan because they might just be able to throw all over them.
So that is my fear, because when you have a team that has one really great receiver and then you have one really great corner, you just have that corner follow him all over the field.
Right.
You can't pick just one with Texas. So basically, you're probably leaving Will Johnson on one side. Now, there is an advantage to that where that side is essentially taken away from the offense. the offense is probably not even going to look there. So it allows the rest of the defense to concentrate on a smaller portion of the field. And that is helpful. Now, what Michigan's going to have to do, and the question here, remember we talked about those two interior guys on the defensive line, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant. Both of them are awesome. Also, the edge guys, Josiah Stewart, Derek Moore, those guys, like they've got to get after Quinn Ewers. What I think is interesting, because I remember when Michigan hired Wink Martindale as a defensive coordinator, remember he was in the NFL for a long time Ravens defensive coordinator, and then he was the Giants defensive coordinator recently. But at the Ravens, he's the one who trained Mike McDonald, who was Michigan's D coordinator. He's now the Seahawks head coach, and Jesse Minter, who was last year's Michigan D coordinator. And I said, it's like losing Eminem and 50 Cent and hiring Dr. Dre, basically. But there is a difference schematically between Wink Martindale and those two pupils of Wink Martindale's. Wink Martindale will heat you up a lot more. He will blitz a lot more. And that, I'm not saying that is necessarily a positive. I'm saying he will take more risks. And so it's really on Quinn Ewers to handle those risks and make Michigan pay when they gamble. If Quinn Ewers does get heated up, if he gets sacked, if he gets pressured and throws a pick or two, then Wink Martindale's plan is working. But it really will be up to how Quinn Ewers handles that.
Andy, do you ever dream about college football?
Always.
Okay, I had a dream, but like college football analysis, because I had a dream last night about this game, and I woke up, and maybe it was a revelation. I don't know what that means. But I wrote a column over the weekend saying we should have seen, or kind of saw, what happened to Florida State coming, right? Like, and you read it, you helped me, craft it. Where are we with Michigan, a team that has not recruited at a historically high level? Now, they're much better, I think, than Florida State has been the last 4 years. Florida State was in the 20s by and large, and I think Michigan's more in the 10s. So that's better. But when we are talking about expectation, they are facing a juggernaut recruiting team that has accentuated their talent through the portal. Like Isaiah Bond is on their team, for instance. They didn't need to go get him.
The guy who won the Iron Bowl last year for Alabama.
Yeah, is on their team, despite the fact that they already have elite level recruits and other players at that position to replace A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy. Could Saturday's game be the first sign of like, hey, Michigan won the national championship. They did something incredible that nobody expected, and they did a good job developing their 5-star players and hitting the portal last year. But from the way I used to understand college football, you had to recruit at a certain level to be very good year over year. So let me ask you this, trying to see it first before writing about it after, because this is a podcast and we're supposed to talk things through.
Yeah.
Why do we think that Michigan will be good enough to potentially win the Big Ten this year when they have not recruited at that level? They lost 80% of their roster and have an unknown at the quarterback position and a first-year head coach. Like, there's a lot there where, like, if we were analyzing this in 2018, where you're like, they're cooked. You know what I mean? And granted, I do know that Michigan does have those 3 studs on defense. They have Donovan Edwards on offense. I know they have Colston Loveland at tight end. I know they've got pieces. And I'm not saying they're going to be Florida State bad by any stretch of the imagination. Just don't go make that up in your imagination and tweet at me about it, because that's not what I'm saying. But should we be erring on the side of caution here when it comes to this Michigan team?
Okay, so here's the thing. I think Alabama and Georgia have spoiled us in terms of being able to reload so well after national championships. And we just assume that anybody who wins a national championship is going to be as talented the next year as they were the year before. That's not usually how it happens. Usually, for 100 years, a team would win a national championship because it had a special group of players. They got older at the same time, more experienced at the same time, and they had a critical mass of veteran talent in a certain year, and then those guys left, and then they built it back up. That doesn't mean they fell off the table, but it means they usually took a little step back after winning the national title. This feels more traditional like that. That said, potentially 3 first-round draft picks on this Michigan defense next year in next year's draft. Like there may be some guys that are first rounders in future year drafts, but 3 potentially in next year's draft. Still very meaningful. Very meaningful. But yeah, the offense is a big question mark. The offensive line is a big question mark. Like Fresno State game, they had a situation where there was a stunt in the middle. The right guard clearly thought he had help from the center, but the center was helping the left guard. And they basically let a defensive tackle walk through and sack Davis Warren. Like that communication stuff doesn't happen when you've been playing together a long time. Like you know what the other guys are doing. So that's the sort of thing that will happen as they rebuild, reload. And that's the risk you take. So this game is going to be so much fun. I cannot wait. PrizePicks, lots of ways to play with this game. Download that app, play $5, get $50 instantly. Also, if you want a free square, every week this month, they're giving you Caleb Williams because PrizePicks has all the sports. So they have NFL, college football, WNBA, darts, esports, doesn't matter. Power slap. So they're giving you Caleb Williams every week this month. So if you pick the Caleb Williams square and he throws for 1 yard in the Bears game, then you're going to win that square. So just remember, they're helping you out with 1. Then you only got to figure out 1 more if you want to go home a winner. So download the PrizePicks app, play 5, get 50 instantly with the code STAPLES. Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples on 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.